This is part two of me talking about the heroes of Supergirl. Starting off is William Day. Personally, I will admit, I really disliked this character when he was first introduced. I thought he kind of became a bit of a better character as he went on, mainly because I thought he had a pretty good friendship with Kelly and a okay friendship with Kara. However, I really disliked him being a love interest because he just really didn't work as one. He, in my opinion, felt like a very dulled down version of Jimmy Olsen, which personally I like Jimmy Olsen on the show. Well, I didn't like him as much as I think I could have, but I thought Jimmy was okay. But I did have a lot of issues with Jimmy, and I feel like William copied really everything that I thought was wrong with Jimmy, but didn't retain any of the good qualities of Jimmy. Therefore, he kind of just became in my opinion, a bit of a dull character. I wouldn't say he's necessarily bad. I thought he did get better in the final season, but he generally, in my opinion, I didn't really feel so much for the character when he died. I mean, I did a little bit because I thought the actors who were affected by his death, that being Andrea, who is played by I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. I think it's such a G. Can't pronounce that. And I thought Melissa Benoist also did a great job mourning William's death. However, I didn't think that his character overall was that interesting. Next is Andrea Rojas, aka Crada. I thought this character was very interesting in the first half of season 5. I thought her whole motivations of being her boyfriend being kidnapped, and the idea that she was really put in this place, and her whole father's suicidal thoughts. I thought it made the character, in my opinion, very likable, and you understood why she was doing what she did. However, post-crisis, the second half of season 5, she really did nothing except for giving really long, boring speeches. It got to the point where I felt like the character overall was not even needed in the second half of the season. I feel like she really much just had her whole arc in the first half and then just didn't do a single thing afterwards. In the final season, I thought the character did a little bit more, and I did like her interactions with Lena Luthor. However, she, yet again, I didn't think was able to maintain her whole, arc from the first season, as it was retconned to never have happened, which I think was one of the crisis changes that I personally was not a big fan of because it made Andrea a very dull character like William. Mon-El. Personally, when he was first introduced in season 2, I thought the character was pretty toxic towards Kara, with the whole idea that he constantly lied to her, constantly embarrassed her, literally made a whole statement when they started dating in front of the DEO, which she specifically told him not to do. He constantly did things behind her back, etc. And the character just came across very immature. However, in season 3, the character matured a lot and grew a lot, with him even admitting that he did do wrong. And I think that made him come across a lot more likable than he once was, making his character, I think, have a very much more depth to him. As beforehand, I thought the character came across as a one-sided jerk, but I think the character willing to admit that he was not necessarily the best boyfriend or the best friend or just the best person was, in my opinion, great character development, and it made him not only more likable, but more interesting as a character, as he actually did grow and was meant to be unlikable when he was first introduced, which is, in my opinion, a very ballsy move to have one of your main characters to come across unlikable, because that is a like I said, a bit of a risky move because you don't know if people are going to stick around to see the character develop and grow. Maggie Sawyer. Personally, I was really sad when Maggie left, but I thought the character's whole arc and run on the show was, in my opinion, great. I thought she was a great character with great strengths and a great backstory with her whole family. Also, another thing about Maggie I thought was that I liked that her breaking up with Alex, or them breaking up with each other, was done actually pretty well. It didn't character assassinate either Maggie or Alex. Both came out of the breakup as pretty respectful characters, as they're respectful towards one another due to the fact that they just want different things. So, in my opinion, that is actually pretty mature of them to do that. As I also feel like they could have just been like a whole messy breakup, upset with one another for not wanting the same thing as each other. But instead, it just wasn't meant to be. which does happen in real life, so I thought it was handled very well. Also, in my opinion, I did wish that Maggie came back, and I'm sad that she didn't, because I'm very surprised she didn't return for the 100th episode or the series finale. I mean, I understand that she wouldn't be at her ex's wedding, that would be a little awkward, but I feel like she should have at least appeared in a cameo. Ms. Martian, aka Magon. Personally, I really like Magon, even if it was a little weird seeing her make out with Martian Manhunter due to the fact that in Young Justice and in the comics, they aren't actually related. They pretend to be related, but in the Young Justice TV show, they're actually related, so it's a little awkward. On this show, of course, they're not related. Instead, they're just fellow Martians, one who is a white Martian and one who's a green Martian, who fall in love and are around the same age. But considering the fact that in Young Justice, which is where a lot of people were introduced to Ms. Martian, I feel like a lot of people are going to feel very uncomfortable watching them make out. Even if, in my opinion, they had great chemistry because of the actors and writing, but still, it's just a little awkward. I also thought it was really weird how her characters kind of disappear in the final season. In the finale, there was a reference to the idea that her and John will eventually end up having children together, which is actually, in my opinion, a pretty good way to confirm that, yeah, she's still around, we didn't forget about her. But either way, I really wish the character did do more. But I like that she was kind of like the mom of the group during the first half of season 5, or the first 4 episodes, pretty much. As Martian Manhunter has always been the dad of the group, it's actually pretty cool to see the mom of the group. Cat Grant. Personally, I really like Cat Grant, which is surprising because the character in the comics is nails on a chalkboard. But on this show, the character is, in my opinion, one of the best characters of the entire series. Any line she ever has is, in my opinion, amazing. Her sarcasm, her whole sassy demeanor, the fact that she is, in a weird way, kind of like a mother to Kara, which is ironic considering Eliza is still alive, but I understand it. Personally, I think Cat Grant is a great character and was a great mentor to Kara, and I really like that she seemed very, not necessarily mean, but very cold, but in reality she was a lot more, warmer or more conflicted than you would probably think at first, with her whole dynamic with her children, her whole thing with her mom, and her whole thing with her own assistant Kara, knowing that she's Supergirl, yet respects her so much that she won't let her tell her until she, feels like it's finally time to do it. As she knew she was Supergirl for a pretty long time. Personally, I think Kat is a great character. And I also thought when they recasted her, not necessarily recast, but like the young actress who played her, when the whole, Midville flashbacks, also continued to do a great role during the whole idea that she and Calista Flockhart are the same person. As they, a lot of times, I think, sometimes cast younger actors who don't feel like the older actors. But in my opinion, I thought both young Cat and old Cat felt really much like the same person. And the final character is Saturn Girl, the least developed of the Legion members. Which, although that is true, I thought the character was still, in my opinion, pretty good in Season 3. However, I will admit, as a fan of Saturn Girl from the comics, I was a little disappointed that the character didn't really do much of her comic book stuff, as instead she was really just a wedge between Mon-El and Supergirl. But even if she is very different than the comic book counterpart, I still thought she was great. I loved her power set, and I loved the way she fought. And in my opinion, Grace May, the character, was, in my opinion, probably a good idea due to the fact that Kara is already a blonde white woman with, a very colorful costume. In the comics, Saturn Girl is also a blonde white woman with a very colorful costume. So I think by resetting the character and giving her a much more, not necessarily noirish costume, but a darker costume was, in my opinion, probably the best idea, because you don't want Saturn Girl and Supergirl to look similar, or else you would probably start questioning why Mon-El married Saturn Girl. I mean, we know it was an arranged thing, but still. And that's it. Like always, please like, subscribe, and see you guys next time. Bye.